Do we you, Doctor Who? Hello, mysterious person behind the screen. Doctor Who's going through some changes right now, isn't it? Yeah, it's hard to believe that after 5 years, Jodie Whittaker and Chris Chibnall are about to bow out as Doctor and showrunner, respectively. I used to talk about Doctor Who a lot on this channel, didn't I? Like, a lot. It used to be my main thing. And I still talk about it quite a lot on this channel, just not all the time anymore. But with one episode left of the 13th Doctor's era, I thought it best to take a lovely trip down memory lane and revisit the last 5 years of the show. Good and bad. It's been a very controversial half a decade, Jesus Christ. But before The Power of the Doctor airs and we fully close the book on this era, I thought it best to just take a nice look back at everything that these last 5 years have given us. I have a feeling some of my opinions are going to be quite controversial. This is a very controversial era, probably the most divisive era in the entire history of the show, so if you disagree with me, great! Sound off in the comments. We can have a chat and a discussion. However, if you disagree with me and want to attack me, you can click the X button in the corner, because I don't want you on my channel. So without further ado, let's take a look back at the last 5 years of Doctor Who and see what it's given us. Series 11. It's really interesting looking back 5 years ago to when Jodie Whittaker was announced as the 13th Doctor. In fact, you can find my very initial reaction on this YouTube channel from the time, and it's an interesting time capsule when we all were kind of looking ahead to what this brand new era would give us for the show. After 7 years of more or less the same thing under Stephen Moffat, I remember the excitement for this was tantalising. The prospect of something this new. It was a female Doctor. We had never had this before. You can see in that reaction video I did at the time how excited I was at just this brand new thing. It was untested waters. It was unsailed waters. None of us really knew how it was going to go. I feel like with Peter Capaldi we had more of an expectation for it because it was a fairly well-known actor. The same showrunner and production team was still on board running it, and I just feel like we kind of knew what the tone was going to be. With Jodie and Chris, I had no idea. And that year, up until Series 11, well, it was over a year, wasn't it? Because we still had, like, the final 12th Doctor specials and all that. But, you know, in that run-up to Series 11, 2017 into 2018, I just remember at the time just the hype wave of that new era. The pics coming out, because of course this was the secrecy. This was the secrecy surrounding this era has been a big thing and a big problem as we get into it. But in 2018, 2017, oh my god, it was so refreshing. The fact that we didn't know anything. It was just so cool to not have this expectation for what Doctor Who was going to be for the next couple of series. And God, I miss that time. 2018, for me personally, was an incredibly exciting year for my life anyway. I left school, I started college, and my whole life was going through so many different changes. And the fact that I had this set point to look forward to, no matter what would change, I had this new, fresh Doctor Who, this new reboot, essentially, to look forward to. And the hype machine for Series 11, that I think the fans mostly generated themselves, I just have so much... It's weird to say nostalgia for it, because it was only, you know, four or 5 years ago, but I genuinely do. I remember when I started college, and there was like a month before the series started, and got the buzz from everybody, even just like casual viewers who were just excited to see what a female Doctor was going to be like, regardless of all the controversy surrounding why you shouldn't cast a woman in the lead role, and why this shouldn't happen, whatever. The buzz to see how this would work was incredible. And I remember sitting down at the start of October 2018 watching The Woman Who Fell to Earth, the first episode of Series 11, the first Jodie Whittaker episode. I missed Series 11. Series 11 is, for me, far and away my favourite series of this era. It peaked at the start. I miss when it felt like it had something to say. Series 11 is bold. It's fresh, it's new, it's different. It's really unlike anything we've seen before in the modern series. It's a complete revamp that, you know, is perfect for casual viewers. I know, because so many of them joined watching this series, and I remember talking to them at the time, my new friends that I made at college, and who had kind of fallen off of Doctor Who years ago and were kind of, into this new series. They were kind of vibing with the direction it went. It was fresh, it was new. You didn't have to have seen anything to understand what was going on. And I know fans reacted negatively to that. I remember at the time, and even now, people criticise this for being a boring series with no link back to the history of Doctor Who. It doesn't feel like Doctor Who, they cry. Well, for me, this feels like the purest version of that original 1963 concept of the show that the modern series has come close to. Think about it. It's the Doctor with 3 companions, travelling the universe, seeing the sights, helping out when they can. If that doesn't scream to you the original TARDIS team, I don't know what does. At the time, I thought it was just so refreshing to not have this series arc to get bogged down in. It was just nice to look forward to Sunday nights where you spent an hour with the Doctor and her friends on an adventure. I miss when this era felt like it was being bold and new and unpredictable. Unpredictable especially. You really didn't know what you were going to get with Series 11 week after week, and I love that. I think back to the glass ceiling trailer, which everybody hated, but I really love, because it's just like, yeah, Doctor Who's going to break through the glass ceiling. Is it on the nose? Fuck yeah. But it just felt like this era had something to say. It felt like it had a mission statement. It felt like it feels like the purest vision of what Chris Chibnall had intended for Doctor Who, because it feels like him coming in and going, yeah, we're going to cast a female Doctor. We're going to show you corners of the Doctor Who universe that you've never seen before, and we're going to have fun doing it. And that's what I call Series 11. It's fun. You can complain all you want about how bored you get because there are no returning monsters. You can complain all you want about the admittedly dodgy writing in a hell of a lot of areas. This ain't perfect. But whenever I watch Series 11, and I've not revisited this era a whole lot, but whenever I do, I always gravitate to just the lovely, light, standalone nature of everything. But that's not to say that the Series 11 was toothless in any way. For me, this era peaked at episode 3. They've never gotten better than Rosa. That is still, for me, one of the greatest Doctor Who stories ever told. I think, anyway. That might be a controversial statement, but it's one of my favourites. And that hasn't really wavered since it aired in 2018. I remember the night of broadcast and just being so kind of proud of Doctor Who for tackling racism in such a head-on way. Little did I know that things would get worse just a couple of years later, but it was just refreshing to see my favourite show deal with it in the way it did. No, Krasko isn't exactly a subtle comment on racism. The episode doesn't have this new take other than racism bad. But the fact that it dealt with it in the way it did, and the fact that it tackled Rosa Parks in the way that they did, oh god, I love it so much. That final scene, the bus scene, I was so nervous that they would fuck it up completely and have the Doctor be responsible for Rosa Parks' stand on the bus or something. But they don't. The Doctor has to sit there and watch.
Oh, no, I don't want to be part of this.
We have to. I'm sorry. We have to not help her.
Graham's face is heartbreaking every time I watch it. The song is perfectly placed. I don't care. At the time, everyone was like, licensed music in Doctor Who, a pop song in Doctor Who. Well, I never. It's perfectly placed, in my opinion. That whole ending of the episode is brilliant. That is, for me, the best moment of this era. It has never gotten better than that. It peaked early. Unfortunately, the era peaked early. It's come close, but for me, Rosa is absolutely my favourite 13th Doctor story. Maybe the Power of the Doctor can come in and just be this rollicking epic that, beats everything else, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think Rosa will forever remain my favourite 13th Doctor story. And we carried on that streak of winning historicals with The Witchfinders and Demons of the Punjab, 2 episodes that I absolutely love. The Witchfinders is a really, really fun, kind of spooky Halloween-esque episode, and Demons of the Punjab is as heartbreaking as Rosa is. The fact that Doctor Who was so willing to go to all corners of the world and explore injustices in society like this, it makes Series 11 stand out for me. I completely disagree when people say it's just a bland series, because when it's doing stuff like this, I don't see that as bland. But even aside from all that heavy stuff, you just had incredibly fun episodes. Like The Woman Who Fell to Earth, which I still think is a fantastic debut for Jodie's Doctor. It immediately made an impression on me when I watched it, just thinking back to that night in 2018 and thinking, holy shit, this is so new and different and it looks amazing. The Ghost Monument feels like an 80s Peter Davison story. It feels like a 4-part classic series story. The Saranga Conundrum has aged brilliantly. I remember that when it aired, everybody hated it. It was like, I had people coming to me in college and going, what the fuck was that about? Everyone hated it. It was oh my god, I remember the reaction to that episode. It was so visceral. But, you know, as I've thought about it and as I've rewatched it as the years have passed, it's bloody good fun. And it's got the pating in it. I rest my case. Another one of my favourites of this series is It Takes You Away, an episode I really wasn't sure what to make of on first viewing, but god, that is such a clever episode. You can't get more Doctor Who than a sentient universe taking the form of a frog on the chair. And our hero is just admiring how beautiful she finds it. And this is where I think the 13th Doctor shines. After Peter Capaldi's Doctor, who, you know, was a very moody midlife crisis character, I love Peter Capaldi, by the way, it was so refreshing to have a Doctor who is primarily concerned with seeing the beauty and the hope in everything she comes across. A Doctor who wanders through these stories with a big old smile on her face and a thirst for adventure. Does she have a huge in-depth characterization? No, not really. Is she a nuanced character? No. But do you know what she is? She's a hopeful protagonist that I think we all needed back in 2018, and fuck me, we still need now. I do agree with a lot of the critics who say that sometimes the way that the 13th Doctor speaks is very CBBC, and I do find it annoying sometimes. But a lot of the time, come on guys, she's adorable. Like I say, it's just nice to have a Doctor who is so infectiously positive. That positivity practically comes off the screen, and just it's so warm. In Series 11 especially, her Doctor is just so warm to me. And nothing screams that more than that bit at the end of It Takes You Away, where she's talking to the frog on the chair, and she's comforting this sentient universe who just wants a friend. I love the high concept sci-fi that entails, and I especially love just the warm, almost very human interaction between an alien and a fucking sentient universe. I especially love when the Doctor says,
You are the maddest, most beautiful thing I've ever experienced, and I haven't even scratched the surface.
It's just so endearing, and the way she delivers that line is just so pure and innocent, and it's ethereal and engrossing, and just Sagan Akinola's score is beautiful, and just the whole scene and ending with her blowing the frog a kiss. I can't praise it enough. This is, for me, peak 13th Doctor. This is the stuff that I love about this characterization of the Doctor. Just that pure wonder and hope that she gives off. It's excellent, and it's heartwarming. Series 11 is highly flawed. The Battle of Ranskorath Kolos is an awful finale. I'm sorry, it just is. It's terrible. There's no defending it. It's awful. Arachnids in the UK and Kablam are both incredibly confused morally. And, you know, as much as I would want to defend the fam because I do like them, this runs into the age-old problem of you really don't have enough for everybody in the cast to do. But despite those flaws, I find myself looking back on Series 11 with a lot of fondness. Not only does it remind me of an incredibly exciting period in my life, but it's just a fun, solid selection of episodes that, you know, is a great intro for me for the hopeful, endearing 13th Doctor. It's the purest version of what I feel like Jodie and Chibnall wanted to do when they came onto the show, and for me, it's absolutely the strongest. It's really funny looking back at who I was when Series 11 aired. I mean, that's part of the great thing about this YouTube channel, is I can look back at like my past selves and who I was and how I've changed. And yeah, it's mad how much has changed in 4 years. I look at my videos from back then and I'm a completely different person now. It's weird how much COVID seemed to just sap away time. Oh god, that got a bit deep, didn't it? Fucking hell. Series 12. Then we get to Series 12. Absolutely my least favourite of the three. Which I know is super controversial because so many people, again, when this aired, were saying it was such an improvement over Series 11 and it felt like Doctor Who again. If you mean that it just included so many past continuity elements and bent over backwards to try and convince you that this was absolutely the original plan, guys, then yeah, I guess it did feel like Doctor Who. but for me, it felt like a huge step backwards. I just spoke about how I think Series 11 is super underrated because it tried something new. It was fresh, it was bold, it was different. Series 12 just does everything that we've seen before. This is when I stopped reviewing Doctor Who on my channel because, for one thing, I was about to have surgery, and the little thing called the COVID-19 pandemic was sort of starting to kick off about this time, but I was just kind of running out of things to say about the episodes, and that didn't even happen during Series 9, which is by far my least favourite Doctor Who series. Everything that happens in this, it just felt like the stuff I was tired of from the later Moffat era. I was tired of seeing these huge continuity references left, right and centre, because it made them feel less special. I was tired of recycled plots. I was tired of seeing the Master, or the Cybermen, or Gallifrey, or the Daleks being used as the big bad at the end of every single series. And that's exactly what Series 12 did. And I thought we'd move past that with Series 11. I didn't want to see a recycling of the same plots we've seen over and over and over again. But that's exactly what the series did, and as a result, it's by far my least favourite. It feels messy, unfocused, and a complete betrayal of the vision that Series 11 set out. I remember seeing the Master come through the portal at the end of Ascension of the Cybermen and just being like, great, we're here again. It's the Master and the Cybermen and Gallifrey. Am I kind of done with Doctor Who? I vividly remember thinking this, and it wasn't that I was done watching the show or anything. Like, I'm never going to stop watching Doctor Who. Let's just get this perfectly clear. I'm ride or die on the show. It's been my lifelong obsession, and I'm never going to give that up. But this was kind of the point where I was going, you know, maybe I've just grown out of caring about it. Maybe it's just going to become like a thing that I watch, but not really care about all that much. And that is sad after how refreshed I felt with Series 11. And to be perfectly honest, thinking back on the series, it's really just gotten worse in my estimations. I think Spyfall is a fine opener, it's fun, it's a cool James Bond pastiche, and it lays some interesting groundwork for where the series is going to go. It's alright. Orphan 55 is a complete and utter mess, and one day we're going to hear what went down on that production, because something happened. There is no way that an episode that sloppily done could end up on TV, and everything was perfectly fine behind the scenes. Something went wrong there, and I'm looking forward to seeing the behind the scenes story of that, because Jesus Christ. Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, though, one of my favourites from the era. Again, this era smashes historicals out of the park. It's fantastic. I love it. I really enjoy it. It reminds me of an RCD episode in the best ways. It's so much fun. I love the bit where the Doctor jumps on the ship and she does her very doctory thing. It feels so... I remember watching it at the time and thinking, yes, that's my Doctor. That feels so much like the character that I have loved all these years. It was just... I love that moment. I love the episode. Then we get to Fugitive of the Jadoon, and I do not get the praise for this one. At the time, I was kind of carried away by the momentum of it because, oh my god, it's a new version of the Doctor that we've never seen before. Pre-Hartnell, classic TARDIS console room, Captain Jack Harkness is in it. At the time, that was enough to kind of distract me, but as I've thought back, what was the point of this episode? It's literally just there to fire off the big reveals at you, and they have no relevance to each other. You don't really get a sense of the consequence of any of it. It all just kind of happens in front of you, and it's meant to distract you like a carrot on a string. I'm just going to say it, I think this episode is a fucking mess. I do not get the praise for it whatsoever. I think people got swept up in the reveals and the hype of all that. I don't get it. I don't get it. I think it's an incredibly confused episode of television. Speaking of, Praxis is a bit shit, isn't it? I also don't think they would have aired this if it had aired a few weeks later because of COVID. I firmly believe this would have been pulled from the schedule because of the subject matter of the episode. Yeah. It's not very good. I don't really like it that much. Can you hear me? Lackluster as well. Amazing concept. Ethereal. Gods. It wastes it completely. I'm not going to dwell on this for too long because I know a lot of people find a lot of comfort in this episode because of the themes that it deals with. It's all about mental health and anxieties and, you know, that's great. I was looking forward to it. I don't think it does it justice at all. Not one bit. A dream episode like this could have really been used to expand the fam, to give them some fears and some depth and to explore their characters. And it kind of tries to do that, and then it just kind of drops it. And I'm sorry, but this kind of episode has been done so much better in other things. I said it at the time. Restless, the finale of season 4 of Buffy, does this exact same concept and explores the characters' fears and hopes and dreams and fears and everything like that. Fantastic. Beautiful episode. So much better than this. Sarah Jane Adventures, The Nightmare Man. Again, the exact same concept. Does that brilliantly. This, it doesn't get a pass. It's not very good, I'm sorry. The Yaz story is nice. That bit's the best part of the episode. The rest of it, though, it's unfocused. It doesn't devote nearly enough time to exploring these themes like it really wants to. Haunting of Villa Diodati is great, though. Yeah, it's one of my favourites. It's fantastic. Again, it's a historical that this era does pitch perfectly. Then we get into finale, the Timeless Child stuff. Again, huge controversy, huge element of the whole thing that people take issue with. I don't in concept. I think it's an interesting way of expanding the mythos. I think it's an interesting concept if you're going to do stuff with it. I don't think they've really done anything with it, but, you know, we'll get there. So yeah, in summation, I think Series 12 is an absolute mess. I think it really, it destroys a lot of the goodwill from Series 11. It's weird to me that it's even the same production team, because it just feels so different. It completely bends over backwards to try and please people who didn't like the kind of freshness and the boldness of Series 11, which is fine. Like, Series 11 isn't for everyone. It is very different, and it's very flawed in a lot of areas. Like, I'll admit it's not watertight. But by completely bending over backwards, it just betrays the vision that they feel like they were going for. And yeah, this series is one of my least favourites of the modern era. And it sucks. It really sucks to say that, because I know a lot of people love it, and there's a lot of good stuff in there. Like, it's not a total write-off, but it's bottom 5 for me of the modern era. It's a mess.
Series 13, Flux.
It's the Flux! So yeah, Doctor Who Flux, Series 13. Mixed bag, but alright. I mean, let's get one thing perfectly clear. This isn't the original Series 13 that they had planned. Because of COVID, because of the pandemic, because of everything that went on in the world, this is, I think, quite far away from the 3rd season that Chris had originally planned. This is very much, we're adapting to the pandemic, bear with us. And it's ambitious, I'll give it that. It's a 6-part serialized story made over a pandemic. That is something to keep in mind. I don't think it's an excuse for like poor writing, directing, editing, but it's something to keep in mind. And for the first 4 episodes of this, I really enjoyed it. I thought it built up such a great sense of momentum. I thought Swarm and Azure were fantastic. Like, far and away the best original villains that the show had had in years. Again, just going by these first 4 episodes. I thought there was genuine stakes, genuine scares with the Weeping Angels, the Village of the Angels. War of the Sontarans was the most I had enjoyed a Doctor Who episode in a very, very long time. I love that. I've only seen it once. This was last year when it was broadcast, but going by the memory of that is a great episode. That strikes a perfect tone for me of being silly enough and campy enough and kind of knowing it and kind of winking at the camera a little bit, but also having enough genuine stakes and serious elements to keep you invested and to keep you engaged in the story. I absolutely love that episode. I think it's wonderful. I think it's fantastic. So yeah, Flux was off to a pretty great start. What's that? Episode 5 and 6? Oh shit. Yeah, I think we were all a bit scared at how Flux would stick the landing, and it crashed and burned hard. Episode 5 is a mess, and episode 6 is one of the most poorly edited bits of television I've ever seen. Oh wait, no, it was overtaken by Legend of the Sea Devils just a couple of episodes later. Yikes. Yeah, it feels like they had written 8 episodes and last minute cut it down to 6. Plot threads are just introduced and dropped. The 3 Doctors thing, cool in concept, but if you're going to do that, the editing of your episode has to be coherent. You can't break the rules of editing in your episode. because otherwise you're going to leave your viewers frustrated, confused, and baffled as to why anyone signed off on this. The whole Flux thing, which had been built up so beautifully over the first 4 episodes, the stakes had never been higher. How the fuck are these characters going to get out of this one? Oh yeah, we'll just reset it. Is the Flux even... Did they even resolve the Flux? I can't remember. It's just wrapped up in like 5 minutes. The Doctor, once again, weird as hell morals. Lets somebody else sacrifice themselves for her and doesn't seem phased by it at all. This happens way too many times over the course of this era, and it's weird. I don't know why it keeps happening. The trademark Chibnall exposition is in full force. This is a thing with the right. Chris Chibnall's a great writer. I will challenge anyone who says that he's a terrible writer, because he isn't. Watch Broadchurch. It's fantastic television. I don't know why his Doctor Who I like to the it's first draft level. It's not even first like draft level stuff. I don't know why this keeps happening. I don't know how that we're 1 episode away from this era. Penultimate episode, Legend of the Sea Devil. I have no idea how lines like he's forcing people to jump off this ship. Don't let the swords touch your skin. I don't know how lines like that keep seeping through, because that has to be written, then performed, and then in the editing suite somebody has to finalise that cut of the episode and go, yeah, that line's good, that should stay in. I don't know why nobody is going, yeah, that line's a bit clunky, we don't really need it, we've got the coverage of this. Yeah, we'll cut that. I don't know why this keeps happening. It's the one thing of this era I'm like, yeah, why has this not been addressed? It's weird. It's really weird. And again, the editing thing, like, fair enough if you had to cut 8 episodes down into 6 at the last minute, but surely in the editing room you'd go, okay, this plot line, we don't really need it. Can we cut around it? Yeah? Okay, we'll cut this plot line then. Why is Kate Stewart here? Why is the whole unit thing relevant? What's the Grand Serpent's deal? Why do we need this many characters? Joseph Williamson, who becomes a completely different character at the end of the episode, by the way. I don't know. Why do we need all this? You could have easily cut so much of this and it would have been so much more streamlined. But again, we have to remind ourselves that it was made during a pandemic, and it was one of the first big shows to go back into the production under COVID restrictions. So, I do give it some slack. But like I said, I don't necessarily think that's an excuse, because you've got things like Chucky and Peacemaker. Alright, US TV shows, way bigger budget. One of them has a killer doll as its protagonist, so you get off there. But even so, those are seamless. You wouldn't know by watching those shows that they were shot during a pandemic. They are watertight. They're fantastically produced. I don't necessarily give Doctor Who, when it is this poorly edited and this poorly written and poorly directed, I don't really give it a pass. I'm sorry. But I do have to take my hat off to the entire production team who made this series a thing. The fact that this is here in my collection, it's in my hands, is a miracle. Flux is a miracle. It may completely crash and burn in its ending, but the fact that we have it and the fact that it was made under the circumstances that it was, hats off to the production team. You pulled together and you made a solid, mostly season of TV. And it, I respect the production team a hell of a lot. And now we're here. We are 1 episode left. We've had Eve of the Daleks, which I love, Legends of the Sea Devils, which I think is abysmal. One of the most poorly constructed bits of TV that I think I've ever seen go out. But now we're here. We have 1 episode left. The Power of the Doctor. We've got Ace, we've got Tegan, we've got the Master, we've got Ashad, we've got Kate Stewart's in it. We've got Jodie's regeneration. We've got the Phasmin romance. We've got the Doctor and Yaz romance that's going to be resolved. We've got so much to tie up in 90 minutes. Fingers crossed it can stick the landing. There's a sense, I think, that the BBC just kind of want to get this over and done with because of what we're going to move on to with Russell T Davies and Ncuti Gatwa and all that. And I've got to be honest, there is a sense I feel that way too. a little bit. But I hope that Jodie Whittaker and Chris Chibnall get a dignified exit that does them justice. So there's not much left to say but to hand it over to you, the viewers. What do you think of this incredibly divisive era of the show? Please be nice about it. I feel like I feel like I'm tempting fate by even just putting a video up about this era on the internet. I'm dreading the comment section, but please be nice. Just tell me what you've kind of thought of the era and how you've kind of responded to it and what it's been like for you. I really would be interested to know because it's such an incredibly divisive era of the show. But it's fun to discuss. And lastly, just one more thing before I go. This whole era is definitely a mixed bag. I'm very mixed on the whole era. But I can't deny that it's been an accompaniment during the last 5 years of my life. It's the end of an era in so many ways. It's the end of a part of me. It's the end of a part of you. For better or worse, we've all stuck with this era. We've all kind of watched how the show has had its ups and downs and how the fandom has gone through, honestly, some of the darkest points that I've ever seen, certainly on Twitter anyway. Infighting and just blatant attacks on people for having opinions. Some of it's been terrible. But overall, looking back on these last 5 years, they've certainly been interesting. You know, you can definitely say it's been an interesting time to be a Doctor Who fan. This era started when I was 16 years old. I'm 21 next month. It's accompanied my late teens and into my 20s, and it accompanied us through a pandemic, through great changes. I mean, again, I just look at how, I physically just changed since Jodie was announced. It's weird looking back on the last 5 years and how much has just changed in my personal life, and kind of each one of these series is just kind of a time capsule for me. And so although I don't really like Series 12 and I'm mixed on Flux, they're time capsules, just like every kind of era of Doctor Who is for somebody. Series 11 for me will forever be associated with my kind of college years, you know, that first period of college and all the new friends that I'd made and the new environment I was in, and it was a great time. Series 12 is forever linked to the pandemic for me. I know that it obviously finished airing before the pandemic, but 2020, Series 12 is forever linked to that part of my life for me. The dark period that it was. It's, you know, it was there. It accompanied me through that. And Flux, you know, was broadcast when I was kind of out of a really bad time in my life and I was kind of enjoying life again, and there was Flux, and it was giving us this flawed and messy but, you know, interesting story week after week. So Jodie Whittaker, Chris Chibnall, for the last 5 years of the show, you have entertained us and thrilled us, confused us and baffled us at a lot of points, but taken us to places that Doctor Who had never gone before. It's been bold, it's been fun, it's been unique, it's been fresh. The last 5 years have been an incredible roller coaster ride, ups and downs, but ultimately I just thank you, Chris Chibnall, for your work on the show. Thank you, Jodie Whittaker, for your performance as the 13th Doctor. Thank you for just being a wonderful ambassador for the show. That COVID thing that Jodie did in character as the Doctor was lovely, and she has been an incredible voice for the show outside of when it's been airing. Thank you to the whole production team over the last 5 years for, you know, going through some really tough times. You know, I think it's an open secret that Doctor Who nearly died. It nearly got cancelled recently, and the fact that the production team, you know, was still there and they stuck with it, we got to thank them for that. So, Jodie Whittaker, Chris Chibnall, Mandip Gill, John Bishop, Bradley Walsh, Tosin Cole, everyone who's been involved in front of and behind the scenes, thank you for your work the last 5 years. It's an interesting era to look back on for sure, but I'm very grateful for it. So, cheers guys.